Welcome to Order Militarist Radio TV. We here are lifelong Catholics, and what we do here is all for free. In love of Jesus Christ, the most holy Trinity, and His holy Church, we will defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Our work is the true sense of apostolate. Any funds raised goes back into this work for equipment. This helps us to give you an unbiased, hard-hitting truth that is not controlled by political correctness or interest groups. Today's topic is terrorism around the world, the South African farmer white genocide going on there, uh, the attack and killing of a veteran in Denver by Antifa, and current updates on what was supposed to be a ceasefire between Armenia, Artsakh, and Azerbaijan. We welcome Brother Alexis Bonillo to the show.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on and especially for this weekly program we do on terrorism around the world, and to help the public know what's going on, because these stories aren't found generally in the media. So where would you like to begin, AJ?
Something that no one is talking about, unless you have RT on your satellite dish. The genocide in South Africa.
What is going on in South Africa? I've heard on Twitter and social media in the last 4 years stories that come out, but the media in the West has completely censored it. And South Africa, for those who aren't familiar with their geography, is the country at the very bottom, the southernmost point of Africa, and a former British colony. It was under apartheid for a long time, where the civil rights of blacks and whites were extremely different. The whites ruled the country, and that came to an end. So I think it's been more than 20 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, however, the new current black party that's running the country is a bunch of racists, and they've said many times they basically want to exterminate all the white people. It's kind of like they become black Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably why the media aren't talking about it in the United States.
Yeah.
So what is going on, AJ? Have you been able to gather some statistics or?
Yeah. Let's see here. The one that was done on RT was shared by Amy Meck on Twitter. Leads off with a female farmer. It's going to get, let's see if I can skip the more graphic parts, but this comes from the sun.uk plus UK. RT picked it up for covering it on the Russian television news. So, a female farm manager was sexually assaulted and strangled by two gunmen at her farm in South Africa. In a separate brutal attack on a farm manager 180 miles away, a man was tied to a pole, tortured before being repeatedly stabbed, and then strangled. The woman, Chantal Kershaw, 44, was ambushed by two armed men at a farm near Johannesburg. And the next farm manager, Brendan Horner, 21, was tortured and stabbed before being strangled to death. The two shocking cases are the latest savage attacks on white farmers in the country. Divorcee Chantal Kershaw, 44, was ambushed as she helped load a lawnmower onto a truck by two armed black men. They then held her down and strangled her in the garage of her farm at Delmas east of Johannesburg and left her lying on the ground before pistol whipping her mother. Distraught mom Greta Spears, 65, was restrained as the farm was looted and a maid locked in the bathroom before they fled the scene in the family's white Chevrolet station wagon. The local neighborhood watch farmers force the stolen vehicle off the road in a high-speed chase after being alerted by the murdered woman's mom and captured the suspects. The farm was looted. A worker at the farm who was stripped and tied to the pole, tied up by armed raiders, was later arrested after The mobile phone numbers of the two arrested men were found in his phone. The three men appeared before Delmas Magistrates Court, charged with armed robbery, theft, and murder, and were refused bail and have been remained in custody for trial. Police spokesman Brigadier Leonard Hathi said, Chantal asked an employee to help her load a lawnmower into a truck when she suddenly saw two armed men inside her yard. They told the employee to take his clothes off and tied him up, and then attacked the woman who was screaming for help, and strangled her, and then went into the house. The victim's mother was assaulted with a firearm, and the house was robbed. A high-speed chase ensued between the suspects and the neighborhood watch group, which resulted in the suspects overturning their vehicles and crawling out to escape. So they were caught, handed over to the police, and opened the case of robbery and murder. In a separate murder, farm manager Brendan Horner, 21, was attacked and brutally tortured before being stabbed 3 times and strangled after being strung up from a pole. The horrific attack happened at De Roth's farm in Paul Roux in Free State Province, 180 miles away from the earlier murder. He was said to have gone through a horrific ordeal. Police spokesman Brigadier Montanzi Makili said Brendan failed to arrive home after finishing work, was reported missing and was found at 6 a.m. the next day, murdered. Now, the next heading says War Against Food Production. His blood-soaked body showed horrific signs of torture and multiple stabbings, and a knife was found nearby on his cap. He was found strung up to a pole and declared dead. 2 men have been arrested and charged with murder and are due in court tomorrow. Gilly Shippers, who owns the farm where Brendan was murdered, said, He worked for me for a year before he was brutally murdered, but this is sensitive. I'm not commenting. Agricultural strategist Dr. Jaco de Villers had described the latest murder as part of a war against food production in the country and said that his murder was slaughter. He told Times Live, How do you murder someone and hang him on a pole for everyone to see? This was a clear message to all farmers. Farm killings have to stop right now. Dr. Jane Baez, safety and risk analyst of Free State Agriculture, told the paper, the senseless killings cannot be allowed with the brutality in which they are executed. It is not clear what the motives for this murder is. There cannot be any justification for killing a person who provides food security. Something has to be done to stop it. Pressure Group Agri SA said that on average, a farm where a farmer is violently attacked will be abandoned for up to 5 years until someone takes it on and restarts production. They said that means dozens of workers and dependents losing their livelihoods. AfriForum spokesman Marius Mueller, who speaks for the civil rights organization protecting minority groups in South Africa, said that the farmers need better police protection. He said this is yet another dark day in the history of South Africa for farmers and those with small holdings, and the murder of these 2 farmers was totally unnecessary.
We can see that there's a lot more here involved than just racism or even terrorism, because terrorists or racists would kill people to take land and not the land taking the land. And yet there's a coordinated effort to attack food production. I saw some figures of a year or 2 ago that said something like 1/3 of all the farms and 1/2 of all the dairies in South Africa have closed down because of this kind of violence that's gone on in the last 15 years. And well, it makes me think of what Stalin did to the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
The Marxists attacking food production. It makes them more dependent on foreign imports. And it makes the people, forces the people to live in the cities where they're under control of the party more. this has to do with the Marxist position of the current ruling government there, which is very racist and very anti-white. And the irony of all this is most people misunderstand what's going on in South Africa. They say, well, you know, the whites made it a colony, so now the blacks are taking their land back. Well, that's actually not true of South Africa. When the colonists came there in the 17th century, I think they first came there in the 16th century, it was almost uninhabited land, and it became a Dutch colony. The current majority of blacks who live in the country, probably 95% of them, are Zulu, and they didn't live in that part of the continent. They actually emigrated into the country and have basically demographically taken over South Africa, where it was used to be a white country. It's now a black country. And so it's not a question of natives taking back their land. It's a question of invaders taking natives' land. And this is what should cause some people to at least talk about it in the media in the West, but it would be so politically incorrect to do so, because as we can see, the media in the West and even the politicians are promoting black Marxist groups in the United States to do the same thing, except in the cities, burn people out of their own businesses.
Yeah. And before we went on the show, I was like, how come they not rising up like they did under the British? I was like, don't they know their history? When this type of stuff started, they took up arms. And you said what?
Well, the things have changed. Yeah, things have changed since then. So the Boers are the original Dutch settlers of South Africa, and the South African territory changed hands. It was time of the French Revolution. The British took the colony for themselves because the Netherlands fell under the control of Napoleon, and they never gave it back. And around 1900, 1901, the Boers wanted to be independent of the British colony, and a war broke out called the Boer War. I think there was two or three of them. And the Brits responded by basically sequestering the entire Boer population, put them in concentration camps, and attempting to starve them to death. I think they starved 20 to 40 to 60,000 to death. And that broke the Boer resistance. And ever since then, the Dutch population has been scattered in the countrysides, and where they're easily vulnerable because one farm is miles from the other, because this is what we would call prairie land. Maybe here in the United States is very similar to the kind of land you see in Nebraska or Kansas, perhaps drier though. And so the farms have to be scattered around where there are rivers or waters or little nooks in the countryside where agriculture can be done. So they're not really in a position demographically to organize a resistance. And then the whole country is dominated in the cities and the more rich parts of the country with high concentrations of population of the people of Zulu descent. And certainly not all of them are violent, but there has been a determined effort since the time of Nelson Mandela to radicalize the majority of the black population and turn them into racists, and basically push their conquest of the whole country. So that's the whole historic consequence. That's why apartheid was, though it was a very racist system, it was a desperate attempt to hold back the demographic wave, was the vast majority of people in the country by numbers were of a different race and a different culture and wanted to take the land for themselves. So South Africa is a classic example of what happens when a country doesn't defend its borders. It ceases to exist. And the genocide of white farmers is the last, perhaps sad chapter in the history of South Africa until it becomes a banana republic.
Yeah. So speaking of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, there was a Patriot rally in Denver, Colorado, and so Antifa and Black Lives Matter thought, oh, we need to have something to counter it, but since our message and our image is not being the greatest from what we've been doing with all this violence, we need something to change it up a bit. So instead of having a counter protest, they called it a soup drive. And
so what did happen for those of us outside of the United States who have been following the news?
yeah. Okay. A shooting in Denver on Saturday afternoon, a BLM Antifa soup drive, has left a conservative demonstrator dead, whom police say was shot and killed by a hired security guard hired by NBC News affiliate 9 News. So they hired a Black Lives Matter Antifa man, who was also that the Pinkerton Detective Agency says also works for them. I'm still trying to wrap my brain on that.
Okay, so how is it the security guard who was Antifa and attacked a conservative? I just a bit confused here.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been confused since Saturday. I was like, okay, he's a security guard hired by NBC News affiliate 9 News, but also has ties to Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and Pinkerton also said he was um, hired by them as an agent by them. So I was like,
Have we just uncovered who's running Black Lives Matter and Antifa?
I think so.
The media stations and Pinkerton?
I think so.
So this
Anyway,
is how all these terrorists are in these cities at the same time the media are to cover them. The media has actually hired the terrorists to create the news.
mm-hmm.
You know, something's very similar happened here in Rome. It wasn't as violent, but it happened on Saturday. I was at a big political rally against wearing a mask, and everyone was very peaceful. But there's a bunch of people there that certainly look like security guards and plainclothesmen, just like idly standing around. And they weren't paying any attention to the rally. But at the end of the rally, when they said now people need to go out and march for liberty, this group that was towards the side of the Basilica of St. John, because we were using the piazza in front of the Basilica of St. John, got together in a small group of like 8, 12 guys and ran like a football team, British football, and we'd call it rugby, ran as a whole pack towards the police. And this along a path where the media were all stationed. So as soon as they began the ran, all the media started taking photos of it. And what ended up in the newspapers and the news report, these people were hired by some kind of, they were either state police or they were in league with the media, because the media were just waiting for this rush to happen. And it wasn't really anything violent. They ran maybe 100 feet, and then and the police was at the end of the place where they were running to and held up some shields and repelled them, and there was some yelling and shouting. So it was obviously staged, but the media knew about it beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be the system of network control. These people might actually not be bussed in. They might actually be coming with the new journalists in their own vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, the whole thing is just theater.
mm-hmm. Yeah. The shooting which was caught on
Deadly theater in the case of.
yeah. The shooting was caught on multiple live streams and shared on social media, involved a man participating and was billed as a patriot rally of conservative Trump supporters. The rally was organized by John Teagan, who is a veteran, a military veteran. He was the survivor of the Benghazi attack, former CIA security expert, and yeah, he went through hell in Benghazi and had a friend killed on Saturday. So, and what looked like on the live stream, I actually saw it because I was getting news for the show ready to go, and I was like, okay, there's Tegan. This and this one guy with a shirt says black guns matter. Came up to their group who were just peaceful, weren't carrying any weapons, had mace, dispersed any bad actors out of the area. The guy says, "Come on, do something, mess me up, come on," trying to eke him into a fight or something worse. And all of a sudden, the guy who was shot sprayed mace at another guy who was at this so-called security guard uh, to get him to back down and be peaceful. And the security guard pulled out, I guess, his service weapon and shot the guy dead in the head.
In the head.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He won't be able to get out of a charge of first-degree murder there because security guards know they should shoot at the feet or at the hands or at the shoulder, but never at the head. Now, did the guy who did the shooting, was he black?
No, white.
And the guy who was shot, was he white or black?
White.
So it was a security guard working for the media who shot a bystander. I mean, a member who was at the rally. They're supposed to be shooting with a camera, not with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what's been the reaction in the United States that the mainstream media is now shooting people with guns?
Oh, the people on the conservative side is like, so now we know that we don't have that the media can't be trusted because apparently they're hiring security guards to shoot people.
And they're hiring someone that actually has ties with the radical left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing. The last thing you would want to do in a security company is hire anyone who had a background like that, because he's apt to shoot someone. And the liability of the company that contracted this guy to the station, as well as the station now, is, and if that is not an affiliate but actually a subsidiary of NBC, you're going to do lawsuits in the hundreds of millions of dollars on this one.
Mm-hmm.
They denied him his civil rights.
Yeah.
By responding with extreme force and egging the guy on too. I mean, security guards should be avoiding confrontation and trying to diffuse it, not egging people on.
Mm-hmm.
So
the only thing the other guy had that got shot and killed was a spray can of mace to diffuse the guy who was egging him on.
Yeah, well, mace is not a toy, and you shouldn't use it to, calm a crowd down, because mace doesn't calm a crowd down. Mace burns your eyes, and it really makes angry the person afflicted, and also makes a person unable to see right. So if you spray mace in the face of someone with a pistol and you don't have a pistol, then he can't see to shoot you right and might end up shooting you right in the head. So the guy with the can of mace was really, I pity the man that he's dead. Okay. But this is not the way you respond. If the other guy's a gun, you have a can of mace, you should withdraw, okay? And you should not egg him on. You should leave the case. So because a gun is a gun, okay? A can of mace is only a can of mace. And cans of mace in the United States, for those of you outside the United States who might be listening to this program, you can buy them, and they're generally meant to be kept in handbags or duffel bags, so that in the case of a mugging or street robbery, you have something to temporarily neutralize the assailant and run away, not confront him. It's not a weapon for confrontation. It's a weapon for denial of approach. And this man was using it just totally the wrong way. I saw some video of what he was doing. It seems like he was using it as a weapon of attack in an aggressive way. And well, alas, he has not the time enough to learn the lesson of what he was doing wrong. So in public demonstrations, avoid conflict. It's not the time or the It's not a question of gaining territory or proving you're right. If you get if you're at a public demonstration and things get violent, you almost always will hurt your own side. So this is a great tragedy.
Yeah. So now we go to international events. There was Saudi, I think Saudi diplomat with a few of the Trump folks in Europe, including Trump's White House lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was in Paris. They were in some location where an Iranian diplomat who has ties behind a plot to bomb and kill thousands in Paris was now, even though he's arrested and sent to Belgium because he also threatened the Belgian court to blow it up if he gets guilty. And said unknown groups will retaliate for him. So, got Iranian terrorists in Europe now.
Yeah, well, they have a network around the world, and not just directly through their own intelligence services, but through Hezbollah. But Turkey also has terrorists all around Europe. Most of all these countries have their networks. And well, it was just a threat then. It was just it wasn't any incident or so.
So now on to the main deal about let's see what they're talking about this ceasefire. This from the Digital Journal.
Okay, so we're talking about the war in Nagorno-Karabakh between Azerbaijan and the Republic of Artsakh and Armenia.
Yeah. So when that ceasefire was supposed to happen at 12 noon, sirens were blaring in Nagorno-Karabakh and the capital. And all of a sudden, shells are raining from the sky with missiles. And like, it's 12 o'clock. There is not supposed to be anything happening. So, and this is what the report's been talking about. So, fresh explosions rocked the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh region on Saturday, despite a ceasefire agreed between the warring neighbors, Armenia and Azerbaijan. That brought a brief lull in shelling and missile strikes earlier in the day. The truce, which entered into force at noon on Saturday, have been agreed between both sides, and Marathon Russia brokered talks in Moscow. Azerbaijan and Armenia immediately accused each other of violations, but the agreement appeared to curb artillery fire during the afternoon, with some Spetnik residents emerging from their homes after days of heavy bombardment. The respite was short, however, the 7 loud explosions rocked the badly damaged city at around 23:30 p.m. on Saturday evening, triggering fresh air raid sirens. An AFP journalist working in the city reported. A senior Azerbaijani official said the truce was only meant to be temporary. It's a humanitarian ceasefire to exchange bodies and prisoners. It's not a proper ceasefire, the official said, adding that Baku had no intentions to backtrack on its effort to retake control of Karabakh. Oh.
Yeah. So there's some of the strange things you see in social media is that the Azerbaijani sign, which now is tweeting numerous tweets in perfect English. They've learned English in 2 weeks. They must be either the most intelligent race on the face of the earth, or a whole bunch of CIA operatives just moved to Azerbaijan and are now tweeting from around the world the exact same things, or maybe they're Turks. It seems like they think that the ceasefire means that the Armenians should stop firing and then they can keep firing. or that you don't keep if you don't keep a promise to a Christian, then he's not going to consider you trustworthy anymore. So, for the sake of maybe a small tactical gain, the Azerbaijanis have just burned up all their trustworthiness now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what this means is the war is going to escalate, and it's going to become more brutal and nasty on both sides, because the Armenians now will have no restraint. The Armenians were practicing a great deal of restraint as Christians, but now I think they realize that the intent of Azerbaijan is genocide. I saw some quotes from Azerbaijani authorities and fans. Their intent is not just taking Nagorno-Karabakh. Their intention is wiping Armenia off the face of the map. No, that they won't openly say it. They're letting some of their fans say it for now. And they have the military advantage with these drones being sold from a company in Israel called Rafael. What a blasphemy! Put the Archangel's name on their product, because
Mm-hmm.
Raphael is an angel of life, but they've made these UAVs which are like angels of death.
Yep.
And it really boggles the mind while Israel, whose entire claim to existence as a nation state is based on argument from native rights, is supplying such weapons to Azerbaijan, because the Azeris are not the native peoples of Azerbaijan, but the Armenians are the native people of Armenia. And it seems like Israel's intent on making a profit while wiping out another native people of the Mideast. And that completely undermines the any moral claim the Israeli people have to Palestine.
Yeah. I was, before yesterday, I was, thinking, shucks, give them a benefit of the doubt. But then I saw a video from one of our pledgers out there who sent to us by email. Thank you again. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and I published this video of it from, you can see it, it's called The Jewish Bankers of Donald Trump. It has its real name is a bit more descriptive, but I would prefer just use the one I did.
Yeah.
And shows that Trump is not a Christian candidate. He's completely bought and owned by Jewish bankers, and he's done their will from day one to day now, and he always will, because he's so much in debt to them.
Mm-hmm. So there's no more benefit of the doubt for me. Israel is not a friend to any actual goodwill nation. And this proves why they're giving all this equipment to Azerbaijan and all this other stuff to wipe Armenia off the face of the map. And by what Azerbaijan said, oh, this wasn't a real ceasefire, it was just temporary. Get our dead soldiers back and stuff. But yeah, you killed an elderly woman with a disabled son in their farmhouse in the Artsakh Republic on the outskirts that borders Azerbaijan. And what did you do to the body, you Azerbaijanis terrorists? You mutilated the poor man's body.
Yeah, it is obviously a lot of racial hatred. Let's point out that this Israeli company didn't give military weapons to Azerbaijanis, they sold them.
Yeah.
Because Azerbaijan has a lot of oil and gas, it's a rich nation. But Israel would never sell these weapons to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, so why should they sell them to Azerbaijan?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So then Turkey is sending these Syrian militias into Nagorno-Karabakh, and they are now asking themselves, why are we here? And it's a very interesting video clip. It's pretty much them being asked, why are we here? And you're going through it good. Let me see what the length of the video is. It's about 2 minutes long. It's in Russian, Arabic, and English, and it does use some profanity, and they talk about how they got over here and who brought them over here. It was like their handlers from Turkey who sat on the plane with them to get them over here. And they were asked, "Are you wearing your own uniforms or Turkey's uniforms?" "No, we're wearing the uniforms of Azerbaijan." And they talk about the area they're sent to, and there's actually no cover for doing anything. It's open, and if they want to escape and flee and go to Iran, there are Azerbaijani snipers in the rear. If they see they try to retreat or leave and go into Iran to get out of the conflict, they are shot. So it's I mean, sure, they're terrorists out of Syria, but they're showing their human side.
But they're being employed by people to think it like Nazis. I mean, who would be so devilish as to import, mercenaries who are trained in terrorism and then shoot them if they try to escape?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe it's more like what they did in the Soviet army and shoot the people, because Stalin ordered men to be shot too if they tried to retreat. But it seems they've been put on flanks, not in the main fronts, so that the Azerbaijan army can advance in its positions. We have to point out that though what's going on is a conventional war, it's not really a war. It's both sides don't have enough military equipment or supplies to maintain a united front. So it's really wherever the military equipment is, there's where the front is. And so Azerbaijan has some mobile and mechanized units and heavier forces, and they're the ones trying to make the push from the southeast, because they're doing a pincer movement around the country like that. At least that's what they're attempting to do. And there's absolutely no reason under the sun for Azerbaijan to take this land back. It's been a free independent republic for more than 20 years. There's no value to this land whatsoever. Azerbaijan is very wealthy and this isn't going to add to any of their wealth. So it's clearly they're doing it either out of racism or religious prejudice, that they can't lose faiths with these Christians having declared their independence. Because the one thing the Islamic mind cannot suffer is that Christians should declare their independence, because Islamic religion teaches that all unbelievers should be destroyed, wiped out, or subjugated, and that any land taken must be taken back. So they don't attempt this with like Spain. Spain was once all under Muslim rule. The Spanish took it back, but the Spanish kicked their butt so royally and completely that I don't think there's any Islamic power today would ever dare get on Spanish soil, though they're trying in their own way with immigrants, I suppose you could say. But this is just going to get worse. If they're using Syrian mercenaries so vilely, imagine what's going to do with Armenians. If they take a city full of Armenians, I expect to see that the Azerbaijan army will kill every civilian, to the last man, woman, and child and baby. Mm-hmm. And they will cover it up and hide it so that the graves and persons never be found. All the while claiming it's because one Muslim baby was blown up, they have the right to kill thousands.
Yeah. So even Gatestone covered this, calling it Erdogan's Ottoman ambitions. This was the emergence of Turkey as a key player in the latest eruption of violence in the disputed Caucasus region of Nagorno-Karabakh needs to be seen within the context of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's ambition of recreating the Ottoman Empire. As the bitter fighting intensifies between Christian Armenia and Muslim Azerbaijan over the over the territory in the Caucasus Mountains, it has emerged that Mr. Erdogan is supplying the Azeris with weapons and mercenaries in their campaign to reclaim control of the enclave. Apart from supplying conventional weapons, there have been suggestions that Turkish-made cluster bombs, which are banned under international law, have been used in attacks on Armenia, which they have been. I've seen the photos. In addition, Ankara has been accused of sending Syrian rebels to Azerbaijan to help with its campaign to reclaim the enclave, which they have been. We've seen the videos, the audio. Turkey's support for Azerbaijan, which could prove to be decisive in the conflict, stems from Mr. Erdogan's determination to create the glory of the Ottoman Empire, which Turkey formed the epicenter of the Muslim world. Although the territory that now constitutes modern Azerbaijan was never under direct Ottoman control, the local tribes came under the influence of the Muslim Turks, to the extent that many Azeris today speak a form of Turkish dialect. More recently, the bond between Turkey and Azerbaijan has resulted in the two countries undertaking joint military exercises on a regular basis. Never one to miss an opportunity to expand Turkey's influence in the Muslim world, Mr. Erdogan has been quick to lend his backing to Azerbaijan in its bid to reclaim control over Nagorno-Karabakh. Within hours of the conflict erupting, the Turkish president tweeted, "The Turkish people support our Azerbaijani brothers with all our means as always," adding for good measure that Armenia was the biggest threat to regional peace.
Yeah, biggest threat to regional peace. He means biggest threat to my Ottoman ambitions. That's what he means. That's a racist statement, considering it's coming from the leader of a country who genocided 1.3 million Christians, most of whom were Armenians, and has never apologized, admitted the crime, or paid any kind of reparations or indemnities. That sounds like racist genocide is in his voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's without a doubt. I don't know what the Armenians doing. I know most Armenians are donating to a fund for sustainable development in the Artsakh province, and that one fund, which is out of a Chase Manhattan bank account, is sucked up like 100 million of their donations. I don't know where that money's going. Okay, but according to what they state on their website in the United States, that fund in no way can go to the war effort. In fact, if it did, they'd be involved in charity fraud. And if it has to go to the rebuilding of Artsakh Republic. That's where the money has to go, no matter who owns it. So Armenians who give to that fund might want to start asking questions, because they might actually be refunding the rebuilding of a province of Azerbaijan and not the Artsakh Republic. What they should be doing is giving it to the Armenian Catholic, the Catholicos of the Armenian Church, and various aid organizations are helping our refugees, and or giving it directly to the Armenian government or the Artsakh government. So I would be cautious about that, because the purpose of this so-called fund that's raised over $100 million does not seem to have anything to do with this war, or in any way could have anything to do with the consequences of this war, except in the most indirect way years after the case. That's not going to help anyone now. Now, I might be wrong. They might be somehow using the funds differently, but if they are, and the US government finds out, they're going to be shut down and those assets going to be seized, and they'll never get to where they have to go, because a US nonprofit cannot raise money for military assistance, and if they're raising money for sustainable development projects, it can't be for refugees of war. It's totally two different things.
Mm-hmm. But there is a place you can donate to that will help properly. Started by Order Militaris Catholicus.
Yeah, so we're an international association dedicated to helping Christians who are victims of persecution and terrorism, and this is what's going on in the Artsakh Republic. And so we've been around 4 years, so we know we set up a fund for humanitarian assistance of civilian refugees and injured, And you can donate to that through order-militaris.us. And you'll see right at the top of the page, there'll be a big thing, Help Armenia. And you could also invest with us so that we can found a security company in Armenia that could assist the in any kind of legal way with the Armenian government and the Armenian military, providing assistance, whatever is lawful in Armenia and in international law. And that's the way to go about it, because there's a lot of people in the West who would like to help Armenia, but there's no point just throwing money over there. Make sure your money goes towards the right thing, and that you pinpoint, target where it's going to. And I'll remind you, contact the Armenian embassy and contact the Catholicos, or the Armenian Church. The Armenian Church has its own hierarchy, and they have representatives around the world. And if you don't know how to contact them, call the Armenian embassy or consulate near you. And they're that's the kind of organization that's going to be immediately helping victims and refugees and have the capacity to do that. So this other organization appears to me tied to the Rockefeller Bank, and the Rockefellers are involved in big oil. They're probably ones who asked the war to start. They're probably the ones that urge Azerbaijan to start, because the Rockefellers won an oil pipeline from Azerbaijan through Turkey to the Mediterranean, and for that they must conquer Armenia. And so I would be very doubtful that that money going to that fund is actually going to help Armenians. I don't really think that's the case, but that's my gut feeling from seeing what bank it's in and how they describe the money is being used. And I don't see why anyone's giving money to that fund if they want to help Armenians who are victims of this conflict, or if they want to help the Armenian or Artsakh military defend their countries. Okay.
Yep. So link to the Armenian fund will be in the description, in the comments section on YouTube. It'll be on the description in BitChute, Mixcloud. Please go there, folks. Be generous. And tomorrow we'll be doing a Catholic politics show. And since I'm from Kansas, I thought, let's do one for Kansas.
Okay, so I'll be able to do a bit later in the day, AJ, tomorrow's program. But yeah, we should talk about politics on your local state level, because it affects. It's something to point. As Christians, we should be concerned about local needs, not just national priorities. And so this will be an interesting program talking about what the Christian Party of America can do for Kansas.
Yep. So stay tuned for that for tomorrow, folks. This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.